Hey there, I'm Will, the handy girl dad, and I'm going to teach you how to change your ceiling fan light fixture from this to this. The tools and materials you're going to need for this project are some wire strippers, Phillips head, flathead screwdrivers, some wire nuts, I like to use my screw gun, some electrical tape, a pair of scissors for unpacking, my voltage tester, and a multimeter. So the first thing you want to do is turn off power to the fixture. I'm going to kill it at the switch, and I'm going to go downstairs and turn it off at the breaker. But you want to make sure that you have no power going to this light because we're going to be installing it hardwired directly to the junction box in the ceiling. We're going to take the fan off of the ceiling. First thing you're going to do, you're going to locate there's a couple screws on this mounting plate. That's what holds it to the ceiling. So you're just going to gently undo the screws a little bit, and they're on an L bracket. So the bracket has these L shapes in them. So once you unscrew it, you're going to turn the plate, and it's going to just come right off the junction box. So now that you have removed the fan from the junction box, you're going to see you've got a ceiling fan mount, and then you locate the colored wires and the white wire. So your white wire is going to be your neutral feed. Your black and your blue wire is you'll have one separate hot wire for the motor to spin the fan, and you'll have another separate hot wire which will turn on the light. So the way this is wired is I can tell that my neutral runs right to the white wire in the junction box in the ceiling, and then you have one hot wire feed coming from the junction box, which feeds power to both the black wire, and the blue wire, which feeds power to the motor, to the fan, and one wire to the light. So I'm just going to undo the wire nut gently and just remove it entirely. Okay, now looking closer at the junction box without the ceiling fan, we have the ceiling fan mount. You have your neutral, your hot, and then on this mount itself it has a green grounding wire. It wasn't connected to anything. I'm not sure exactly why, but we'll find out in a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this bracket and clean up the junction box so we can get a better view. Okay, so now that we have that bracket removed, you can clearly see in the junction box you have your black hot wire, you have your neutral wire, white wire, and then you have a grounding wire up in the box here. This is a metal box, so it looks like they just grounded to the box. And so now I'm gonna connect the fan back up to this junction box in the ceiling. A good confirmation to know where your power is coming from. Say imagine you open up this box and there were two black wires here or two blue wires, and you didn't have a clearly designated hot and a neutral. You can, if you're comfortable with it, I turn this breaker back on and flip the switch, and I'm going to use my volt tester here to confirm. So I'll put it here. There's no feed coming on this wire, but if I put it here, it lights up. So this is my feed wire, or the hot wire. So that's a good confirmation to know where the power is coming from. On your ceiling bracket, which is going to mount to the junction box, on the junction box there's threaded holes for your screws, and so you're going to line your plate up with those screws and install your junction box screws into the ceiling. So you're going to thread your wires through. You're going to look up, see where the hole is in the ceiling, and you're going to mount. And you're just going to screw these in. I usually start it by hand, get it lined up, and I'll just drive it in. I'm not going to tighten it all the way because I want to be able to spin the box a little bit to make an adjustment on the other side. So now I've got one screw into the box, and then I find the other one, and it's located here. So then I just tighten that up. Boom. And so now that it's nice and tight, I drive the other one home in this box. This ceiling fan is now mounted nicely to my ceiling. Now I want to mount the housing to the bracket itself, and there are 4 screws that are already installed, which I'm going to back out, and I'm going to install them through these holes here, and that will mount my fan motor to the ceiling. Once I've driven it home with the screw gun, I'll take a little screwdriver just for a little bit of finesse, kind of make sure they're tight. The ceiling fan, you want to make sure, the first thing too is you want to make sure if you're replacing a light with a ceiling fan, you want to make sure your junction box in the ceiling is rated for a ceiling fan. You can't put a fan on a regular light junction box because it'll wobble and it can pull itself out of the ceiling. My ceiling fan was previously installed. I went upstairs in the attic. I looked. This junction box is installed on a joist, on a joist, so it'll hold the weight and the vibrations. Okay, so now we've got our feed coming from the ceiling, coming through the mounting plate. The motor is mounted to the mounting plate, and our motor wire is coming out of the motor there. And so now we're going to connect this to the fan control transmitter for the remote control. So it's just a quick connect here. That clips right in. And then what you're going to do is this is going to, your hot and your neutral feeds from the controller is what's going to connect to the building. So this is powering this. So now I'm going to just take a couple. They supply you a lot of times with these tiny wire nuts in the packaging. I'm not a big fan of them. They're really tiny. I prefer to just use my own wire nuts. And I'm a little old school. I like to tape them. You don't have to, but I just, it gives me a little bit of peace of mind that everything's nice and secure in there. So on the transmitter, this is we're going to connect the white to white and black to black, but I like to strip back a little bit of this wire on the transmitter. It just gives me a little bit more to wrap around my Romex, which is the wire coming from the ceiling. Just gives me a little bit tighter, I feel like, of a connection. And so now that I've wrapped it around, I'm going to use my wire nuts and give it a nice twist. Make sure that we are connected. And then after you've done that, you want to get 2 or 3 revolutions of a twist around the wire. And then 2 or 3 revolutions around once the bite is in there. And then what I do is, it's called the tug test. You want to make sure that you have a tight connection inside of this wire nut. So you gently tug on the wires going into the nut and see if anything comes out. If it doesn't come out, you have a pretty good connection. And what I like to do is, you can stop there, but what I like to do is I take a little bit of electric tape. This might be, some people might say this is over the top or unnecessary. It is, but for me, I like to do it because I like to make sure everything's nice and tight and my electrical connections are tight. So what I do is I just take a little bit of electrical tape and I wrap it around my wire nut. And I'm sure, you don't have to do this. It just gives me a little bit of peace of mind knowing that I have a nice tight connection. All right, now that I'm connected to the power in the building, I'm going to take my transmitter and seat it nicely up inside this holder for it in the mount, in the bracket itself. You just kind of tuck the wires in there nicely. So now, I'm going to take the hot and the neutrals themselves and tuck them in. So now we are connected to power. Now we're going to put the fan body cover on. So the fan body cover has these teeth, these 4 teeth that are going to correspond to the teeth in the mounting bracket themselves. itself, and then you're gonna put it up, and then you're just gonna insert it into the teeth and twist it and lock it in. So you can kind of look up into it, see where the teeth are. And now that I'm in, I'll give it a twist and the body is installed. So next up is installing the fans to the adapter, which you're gonna screw this in to the fan. And then what happens is, and then this gets attached to the bracket itself, and then you turn the fan on, and this is what spins. Pretty straightforward. It's just a couple screws. You want to line them up. It's labeled, it says up and up, so you can't really mess that up. So the way you do that is you're going to take you're going to line up the holes on the bracket. So you have these holes on the bracket and your foam blade, and you're just going to screw it in there. You know, you don't want to over tighten it, but you're going to do this with all the blades. Now we're going to mount the blades to the motor. So on the motor you have these 6 screws, which correspond to the screws in the fan. So you're going to back out these machine heads. Just do 2 at a time. Take your time with it. You don't need to rush. There's no rush. So just working on our house and saving some money. All right, so now the last part is to install the finished plate. There is a little nut in here, which you can dial back or up and down, which will give you a certain set height. I like it to be nice and tight. It'll cover the screw holes, make everything look finished. So I'm gonna back that up a little bit, and it's just screws right onto that spindle. Now we have our new ceiling fan.